Hi everybody, this is Annie Bradley and here's my Module 6 activity. Sorry in advance about my voice, I'm a little bit under the weather right now. So just as an overview, what I did was a STEM activity actually relating to our Journeys curriculum and a story that we read. So the students had to create wind chimes that make a sound when wind blows through them. And I really like this activity because it aligns with my integrated approach that we talked about in BIBE, that we integrate STEM into daily lessons. And I really liked how this was integrated into our reading. It's great that students can see those connections. So a little bit more about the activity. This is the handout actually that I'll be attaching, but you can see this is what the students get. So they get their challenge to create the wind chimes for Mrs. Wade's stores, and they must make a sound. You can see their materials. So they get string, paper plates, silverware, paper clips, coins, tapes, cups, fans. They have to plan and create it before they even get the materials. And they have to evaluate their plans, so the strengths and the weaknesses. Once they then build it, they have to look at the outcome. So did it actually work, yes or no? And then they're also reflecting on it and seeing what they could do better next time if they were to do this again with their team. It also has a rubric with it, which is really great because it's another way for students to evaluate themselves and for me to evaluate them as well. Here are some pictures of students created them, so you can see they were put into small groups. I teach third grade, so they're about 8 years old. That's me. I do look like a student. I look really young, but that's me with some of my students working on this activity. Just some more pictures. And here's a student with an actual part of their wind chime that they started to make, but you can see that there's a lot of collaboration going on. Here's one of the final products for one of the groups. And you can see here how students first designed, and then they're really going ahead and they're writing out in words too how they planned this, which is awesome, especially for 8-year-olds to do. So how did this align with STEM? Well, first and foremost, I thought about the misconceptions that we talked about in Chapter 1 of Doniphan and Bransford. One of the big misconceptions with this was that students think if they make something that looks like a wind chime, it'll automatically make a sound. However, that's not necessarily the case because they have to understand that the lengths of the different chimes affect if it's going to make a sound, because they have to cling together in order to do that. So there's a little bit of math involved there with that. So we discussed sound and how to create sound and what they would need to do. I also loved that they were allowed to reflect metacognitively on this, just like Doniphan and Bransford discussed. There's the rubric for them to self-reflect on, and the handout also allowed the self-reflection in written form. And this is just a great way to kind of regroup and think about what they learned and what they would do better next time, work through their problems and discuss their problems. Lastly, how did it align with inquiry? So I believe it was guided inquiry as described in Banshee and Bell, 2008. So that's when the teacher presents the questions and then the student answers the question, finds the solution using a student-created design and procedure. So I gave them the question and I did give them some steps to follow, but ultimately they were the ones who were trying to create the solution, the design, and the procedure. They got to formulate explanations from their evidence. So they used explanations. Why would this work? They communicated and justified their explanations. And lastly, they were engaged. And I think engagement is the key to inquiry. Without learning how to get students engaged in inquiry, it's not going to happen in the classroom.